Good afternoon, one and all present. I am Agrima Tripathi, an ISTE VIT representative and your host for this session. The Indian Society for Technical Education is a student-run chapter in VIT Vellore. Our goal is to equip today's engineer with technical and management skills they need to solve to organize a plethora of hands-on workshops and events aimed at developing better professionals, fostering holistic community development, and igniting creativity and passion among budding engineers. Our flagship event, Horizon, is here, under which we have conducted a number of workshops like Code Asymptote, ML Bootcamp, Web Dev, and Electronics. We are also conducting a 48-hour hackathon, Technica, which is currently going on. Today, we have a renowned scholar and a tech enthusiast, Ravi Purohit, with us. Ravi sir is the Vice President and the India Head of ColorTokens, a next-generation cybersecurity platform company headquartered in the US. He has successfully built and scaled up teams, created new functions, driven outcome-oriented cultures, and led business operations. As a part of ColorTokens' core executive leadership team, Sir is responsible for decisions pertaining to the India unit. The ColorTokens Zero Trust Cybersecurity Platform provides workload protection across crowd, cloud, and legacy, microsegmentation, endpoint application protection, and remote access. Before ColorTokens, Sir has worked 25 plus years at Wipro and initial few years at TCS. We are pleased to have you here with us, sir. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over the stage to you.
Thank you, Agrima. This is Ravi here. I hope you're able to hear me.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, thank you. So this is really, it's my privilege to be speaking to what I would say future of technology, future of country, and it's a proud moment for me to share a very concise learning from my experience as well as my current job at ColorTokens. I'm going to share my screen. Yeah, so the topic I've chosen for you all today to reflect on is why computer fundamentals, and quote the word fundamentals, and cybersecurity are so important for the students at VIT, and I understand all other engineering college participants in this event too. Let's reflect on who you are, right? What are you trying to become? You want to become a technology expert, you want to build products, solutions, you want to do something meaningful. At the end of the day, you want to earn a lot of money. Some of you also want to run businesses and become very, very successful in whatever you do in your life. If I tell you, if I give you this proposition that spend $1 with me and avoid spending $30, isn't this wonderful? This is what cybersecurity is about. The size of cybersecurity industry is $250 billion, and for those who are good at mathematics, just multiply 250 by 30, $6 trillion. That's the amount of money that all the companies across the globe end up spending to prevent their reputation, to pay money to cyber criminals, right? So the industry is making only $250 billion, but they are spending $6 trillion for the cyber criminals. And that's a very, very big disparity. It is a completely, it's a recognition that this equilibrium needs to be broken. And that is where cybersecurity is not just a technology, but it's essentially a business play. All the CEOs in the global enterprises today are extremely concerned about cybersecurity. Now, let's look at it like this, right? If you're a leader in technology, if you have created IT systems or even if IT programs, The programs that you built, think about this question. Are you trusting someone you cannot see? There is a very complex problem, at hand today. Our programs that we develop, the systems that we developed, interact with so many users, so many APIs, so many people who are out of your, trust circle. They could be good, they could be bad, they could be ugly. They could also be lethal. They could really disrupt your business. Why does this happen? Most of us have been, uh, you know, brought up with this principle of Vishwas Mein Duniya Kayam Hai. For those who don't know Hindi, trust is everything. The business runs on trust. A lot of friendships run on trust. But in the world of cyber world, there are a lot of brilliant minds who are behind the scenes trying to create some problems. It's very rare to find somebody who can really build something which can halt their efforts, and that is where the concept of zero trust came about. So while in business it is about trusting people, trusting the suppliers, customers, in IT world, specifically in the world of connectivity, zero trust is very, very important. You must stop trusting one that you cannot see. You must know for every interaction between two computers or two programs, who's the user, which workload is being accessed, how is it being accessed. And zero trust is a cybersecurity methodology or a framework which came about 10-15 years back, but it is just coming in uh, prominence over the last couple of years. Now the question is, how do I make it happen? It sounds so simple, philosophically agreeable. Uh, and let's look at technology, how it evolved. Traditionally, people who designed their enterprises, they had a layer of defenses, to protect their applications, database, devices, users, and servers. One which is in the inside circle. There were many controls that you could put and create a perimeter around your core business, and it's a very structured and controlled business. In the traditional parameter approach, one mistake in any of these control can really lead your bad actor to be inside the enterprise and then exploit whatever weaknesses that exist and do lateral movements and create the damage that they are intending to do. Now the modern reality is different. You know, businesses are anytime, anywhere, anyhow. You will see that data is distributed globally across clouds. Applications run across clouds through APIs. A lot of you actually even install programs that you don't even know what it does. It's just a simple call for you. It might be just a sorting algorithm, but behind the scene, what does it do? You don't know. So there are the traditional perimeter world does not exist. You cannot get away from it because that's the nature of technology. You must utilize these external services, but the fundamental principle is the world which used to say that trust inside and anything which is outside cannot be trusted, doesn't exist anymore in the world of computers. And the principles of zero trust essentially is no implicit trust, always verify before you give access, and give access in a least privileged manner for a short duration of time and purpose. What are you trying to do here? You're essentially trying to protect your IP, protect your core business. You're trying to secure your digital transformation. You're trying to secure the reputation of your business. It is said that if you're buying something from a company, and if that company has a cyber breach, definitely your trust goes down, and you don't purchase from such companies anymore. How do you become resilient in case if you are one of such companies? It is not just about you, but there are suppliers that connect to your systems. You connect to your customer systems. So it's a full value chain of various companies coming together, which can get impacted if there is an issue in your enterprise network. And at the end of the day, user, how do you protect the data of the users, the integrity of the users, and so on? So in the zero trust world, there are some assumptions, some principles that I have listed there are very, very critical. You must assume hostility inside your network. You must assume that you're already breached. You must assume that every device and network can be a threat. And hence, everything should be authenticated, authorized, and the policy should be calculated closer to the source and implied closer to the source that you're trying to prevent. ColorTokens has a solution. We have the first, purpose-built zero trust cybersecurity platform, which is delivered in SaaS model. SaaS stands for software as a service. It's cloud delivered software where our clients can just plug and play and implement the cybersecurity defenses or improve their cybersecurity posture. It is essentially breaking down the security silos. We are a US headquartered company. A lot of technologically advanced work happens in India, and there is a small center in US. We're about 400 employees, a very young and agile company. We obviously take a lot of pride in filing patents. We are recognized by various leading organizations like Gartner, Forrester, and there are many others mentioned on the slide. I am proud to be part of this enviable team, and anybody who's interested, I will be delighted to talk to you if you want to become part of this team. What are the kind of things that we have done? We have these are the type of questions that we address. How do you secure patient health records? How can you extend life of traditional systems that still exist and do a lot of work in many of the large companies, which are typically unsupported Windows operating systems? There are many times that people join IT, they leave the organization, and what do they leave behind? They leave behind a lot of configurations which nobody knows about. So there are a lot of misconfigurations which are not relevant anymore, and that leaves door open for many attackers to go and attack that server. That's something that we can help you prevent. In case if there is a malware, we prevent execution of that malware, and we reduce the spread. We reduce what is called blast radius. A lot of you do a lot of purchases on retail stores. They have something called point of sale machines. These point of sale machines needs to be isolated as per compliance requirements. That is something that our microsegmentation naturally enables you to do. And there are 100 more such examples, and every implementation that we have for our customer is a moment of delight for our customers. Technologically, how does it get implemented? I've just tried to create a small architecture diagram here. If you look at the bottom, these are what I would call sensors. So they take data from all the computers that we are trying to prevent. They could be legacy systems, they could be cloud systems, they could be internal data centers, they could be user machines, they could be servers. So this data essentially is collected in our SaaS platform, ingested, married with vulnerability, threat, and identity information, and that allows us to do a couple of things. Just to keep it simple, it allows you immediate visibility of what is really going on in my company. Second is, with what you see, what is going on, what what is it something that you want to stop happening, right? And what is something that is valid? So there's a AI based policy recommendation engine that defines what the right policies are for the client, and helps customer choose and apply it. And then there's a simulation mode and an enforcement mode, which is essentially putting that policies in action. So what did you do here? There is a simple way of understanding this. Many of you are very young. You just come into a hostel life, or coming out of school, and just a couple of years back, maybe 10, 15 years back, you were kids. At home, if you're left alone, and if you were told that by your dad or mom that, hey, XYZ will come, allow him to enter. He just needs to take maybe this utensil from the kitchen and he will go away. So if the person is told to you, it's very easy for you to detect that person and allow that person. But if you're told that, hey, don't allow anybody who has a mustache, don't allow somebody who's wearing dark glasses, somebody who has a curly hair, very difficult for you to really act on those kind of instructions. So the idea of zero trust essentially is to implement a positive security model where you will define what is the right behavior, and not just trying to figure out what is the bad behavior. So, well, the second one is very important. It is actually more difficult to do than trying to find out what is the right behavior. So essentially, we from a technology perspective, we are microservices-based architecture. We integrate with a lot of leading products that exist. There's a concept of east-west traffic in the enterprise world. So what if the computer is trying to access you from outside, it is called north-south. But within the enterprise, like one VIT computer to another VIT computer, that is called east-west. And traditionally, 90% of traffic in any organization is east-west, and there is no solution for it. Microsegmentation provides that solution. That is what ColorTokens is very good at. And how does it provide? It's not easy, right? It needs a lot of AI, a lot of ML, a lot of data, ability to process real-time big data, right? So those are the kind of technology challenges that we deliver to every day. What kind of work our engineers do? They do cloud platform management, they do big data science, they do automation. There is a lot of visibility, which is also a very big front-end problem, user interface problem, because when you have to throw tons of data at a human being, it's not easy for you to attract attention to what is most important, and that's something that we do. And the complexity of our customer environments are essentially extremely high. So it's a multi-environment systems programming. So these are the reasons why understanding computer fundamentals, whether it is operating system, whether it is uh, networking, whether it is AI, ML, whether it is web programming, C++ in object-oriented programming. So a lot of those technologies are very, very important for our engineers to learn. We have a distinguished talent program that we have, where we have a very structured way of inducting new talent into the company. This is our office, and with this I will end my presentation and open it up to Q&A. I will be happy to get any questions that anyone may have.
Yes, sir. We'll move on to the Q&A session. Thank you so much
Sure.
for such an informative session. I'm sure we all have learned a lot. We'll just wait for the questions now. Okay, so we have a first question. It is how exactly can I transition onto the field of cybersecurity after having experience in web dev?
Okay, so it's a very, very good question, and I'm so delighted that you're thinking about it. There is, there are fundamentals of cybersecurity, right? So definitely read up on some of those books. Uh, there are two aspects to cybersecurity, or rather three aspects, right? One is the encryption and all technologies related to encryption. The second is more around the technology, right? So operating systems, networking, Kubernetes, how do these things work, right? So if you master yourself in those areas, you essentially will know the IT architecture of systems that you're eventually supposed to prevent. And the third dimension, which typically comes a little later in the career, is a business dimension of risk, the quantification, controls. So if you have to justify the spend on cybersecurity, how do you do that, right? It's very difficult to justify spend on cybersecurity because you're not generating revenue, you're preventing damages to happen, right? So those are certain other elements of cybersecurity. So as you are into the web programming, you would have come across some security controls, and they might find initially very boring to you, where it is like, this is policy, this is inbound policy, outbound policy. If you do AWS Cloud Practitioner, you will possibly zip past that module for 5 minutes, and that will not be exciting, I can tell you that. But what will be exciting is if you hear what kind of things that can go wrong in the cybersecurity world. that will prompt you to go a little deeper in terms of what kind of tightening you have done in the web programs you yourself have built, right? Since you are into web programming, whichever operating systems that you are kind of creating instances of, you should understand that system a little bit better, and then grow from there. You should possibly look up the industries that you like or your parents are in and see what kind of issues have happened there. I'll give you one instance. In Germany, one of the doctors was unable to treat his patient because the system were ransomware and all the data of that patient was in the system. So he did not know what to give to this patient, and that patient died. Now, is that a cybersecurity issue? Is it IT issue? Is it process issue? Very difficult to point out, right? So cybersecurity is a business topic, very intertwined to business resilience, right? So I would say start learning things in and around your area would be my short answer.
Okay, great answer, sir. We'll move on to the next question. The next question is cybersecurity and crypto connected?
No, I think crypto. I'm assuming you're saying cryptocurrencies. They are not. They are not connected. There are in the financial world. There are allied fields around cybersecurity, which is fraud detection and prevention. That is not cybersecurity. It's a cyber. It's a little different aspect of cybersecurity. The purpose of cybersecurity is to essentially protect your programs or your data or your network to be utilized by any known or unknown actor in any wrong way, right? Wrong way could be intentional, could be unintentional. So that is what is cyber security. It is trying to secure your compute, essentially, compute and
Okay,
storage.
okay, sir. Moving on to the next question. It is asked that, sir, how can we start a career in cybersecurity?
Well, I do have internships open, so if you are very enthusiastic, I can offer that. But regardless of that, there are a lot of courses available. So please look it up, inculcate your interest into it. There are many companies in cybersecurity. I would suggest that if you're not yet graduated, internship will be a very good way to start. If you're already graduated, try to understand how cybersecurity works or will be working in the company that you're planning to join. So those will be some areas. Uh, Cybersecurity generally comes from the infrastructure world or application world in the real life, right? So you can possibly be much more curious in those areas to get into that part of the media.
We all will be coming for cybersecurity internships to you then, sir.
Surely.
Uh, the next question asks this: how does one respond to cybersecurity emergency?
Okay. There are protocols that are defined by typically CISOs in each organization as to what to do. Often these protocols are about let's prevent further damage from happening. So that's what type of activities that get started. Essentially, it means disconnecting that particular impacted device from anything else which is important, right? Just to keep it simple. Other things are forensics that happen. It is slightly complicated where you go through all the historic event for the last X number of days, transactions, data, and that is more of a detective type, activity where you're analyzing things which have already happened, right? So those are things that happen to block the breach from happening. In our technology where we do microsegmentation, one of the advantage of microsegmentation is it creates kind of virtual perimeters around related workloads or related computers, right? So if that computer got damaged or breached for any reason, the other computers are not impacted, right? So you're preventing the lateral movement. So to that extent, there is a cyber resiliency inbuilt that your damages are limited to, say, if say your student systems got hacked, your finance system should not get hacked, right? They should not move somewhere else.
Great answer, sir. We'll go on to the next question now. The next question asked is: what are the biggest cybersecurity threats these days?
Okay, it's a very difficult question because generally there is one attack in every 9 seconds globally, but the biggest attacks are essentially coming for Ransomware is one very big area which is coming up. The second one is state actors. Ransomwares are basically people trying to make money by disrupting your business. And there are state actors which are doing it in a much more structured manner to damage a country or a large establishment. And the third one, which is less prevalent now, are the insider attacks. So of course they are there, in terms of disgruntled employees, but proportion wise, they are lesser there. So I would say state actors and the ransomware are bigger attacks going on.
Okay, extremely informative, sir. Uh, the next question asked is, what hard skills must one have to excel in cybersecurity?
Okay, so
Yeah.
two things there. One is if you're looking at trying to join a product company versus trying to become a services company, right? So in a services company, it is more around various systems that you integrate with and what kind of uh, detection and response mechanism that you can develop, right? So you should learn how does a cyber attack happen and how should it be prevented, what should I do. It's more of an activity based learning. If you are trying to join a product company, there are different cybersecurity product areas. Some are into cloud security, network security, some are into application security, and so on and so forth. So try to learn, those areas if you were trying to join the product company, right? So that's where computer fundamentals becomes important, right? So I'll just take an analogy that if you're joining an e-commerce company, you will want to learn how retail business works. It is not just about e-commerce, right? It's not just web programming. You will want to know what is an order, what is an order line, what is a discount, all those things you need to know. Similarly, if you have to do cyber security, you must learn computer fundamentals. If you don't know how computer is designed, or how network is designed, or how Kubernetes works, or what is the next technology in quantum computing going to be, if you're not interested in that area, it will be very difficult for you to become cybersecurity expert.
Okay, great piece of advice, sir. We'll move on to our next question. The next question is, what is the difference between cybersecurity and ethical hacking?
Cybersecurity is broadly an industry, right? And ethical hacking is one part of it. That is essentially trying to hack and tell the organization that there's something wrong, please fix this issue, right? So it's essentially a good thing that they are doing by, before somebody else can hack you, you're hacking and telling that particular company that there are some problems there. This is just one part of it.
Okay, sir. Our next question is, if I want to go into the field of cybersecurity, do I need to have an in-depth knowledge of all the OSI model layers? Yes.
Yes, I think very important because that will be your fundamental, grounding. It is not that you will use it day to day because many of those have been solved, but understanding of that will help you really become much better, as you're designing cybersecurity products.
Okay, great advice, very insightful. The next question we have is that, do we know where our data is and how is it protected?
I mean, if you're designing the system, you should know. Generally, there is data at rest and data in transit. Those are the things which are typically used in cybersecurity, and there are means to prevent that. When data is in transit, how do you encrypt it? And same thing when data is in at rest, how do you prevent access to that data as well as you store encrypted data, right? So those are the things that you need to do. There are new fields of cybersecurity also emerging, which are not yet that prevalent, but there are companies which are looking into it, which is security at a CPU level, in memory security. Similarly, hardware security. You can. There are ways to uh, open a car. If you can figure out how the signals are sent from the remote to the car, right? So there are how do you prevent that from happening? So those kind of technologies are also coming in the hardware security world. Not that industry is not yet matured, but it could, as things progress.
Okay, sir. Moving on to the next question, we have what are some of the security measures that web developers should take to ensure that their website is secure?
Okay. I would say there are every APIs and packages that you use, there are vulnerabilities in that. So first of all, you should try to understand what are those. Second, there are good security, good web development practices, which is in and around security by design in the process itself, right, that you need to do. There are basic hygiene that uh, typical high school developers don't do, but as you get into the organization, you will do, is in terms of where do you store your passwords, secrets, your keys, tokens, whatever you're using. So those are certain elements that you must look at. You have to ensure that you're not leaving your password in the cookie, right? So these are some basics. You can start there, but try to follow. There is a MITRE framework if you want to understand how attackers attack. So MITRE, MITRE. So look through that. That will give you a good insights into what all kind of things can go wrong, and then there are category of things that you must do. Your web program may not be touching every category, but whichever category it touches, in that area you can then further do a little bit deeper investigation.
Okay, sir. Very informative. We'll move on to our next question. As a college student in their first year, what can we start learning? What can we start learning to start off our journey in cybersecurity?
Okay, so one, definitely you should learn encryption because that is important. Not all that industry is more or less mature, so you'll not be designing a lot of encryption algorithms, but it'll be important for you to understand what is the key, what is encryption, what is a hash, what is MD5. So some of these things are important. The second area is networking, because whether it is on-premise to cloud, or whether it is internet, or whether it is computers connected within home or Wi-Fi, phone, networking is extremely important for you to know. Operating system is also very important for you to know because every operating system has a different way of protecting the processes that they are running, and these are fundamentals that you must study. Beyond that, as you join a cybersecurity company, your typical web programming skills and cloud skills, Kubernetes, all these things will become important for you. Uh, but if you do that in isolation without understanding how network works, it can get very confusing to you. Right? So it's very important that you take encryption. There is a course called CompTIA. That's something that you can also look at and see if that helps you. It's a certification, not a course. COMTIA. COMPTIA.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir, for that information. We'll move on to our next question. It is asked that do we know how to respond in a cyber? I think we just did that question. Next question asks this: what are some of the biggest upcoming projects in the field of cybersecurity?
I think zero trust is one of the biggest, if you ask me, because um, Joe Biden has also instructed all the federal agencies to implement zero trust model. Right now, there are other offshoots of this, which is continuous monitoring, for all the systems that are going on. Right, the all the companies are also coming up with a tighter regulations around security and privacy. So that is creating a lot of project work for all the companies, whether you are a security company or just a retail company or a manufacturing company. You'll have to understand what your country regulation, your country and your customer's country, right? So that you are taking those measures. So these would be some of the biggest, larger projects going on in the product world. One of the challenges is that every company, large company, has around 50 cybersecurity products, but they are still very uncomfortable, right? So anybody who's got brilliant idea or solution to the for addressing customers' problem, I think they definitely have a good role to play.
Okay, sir. We'll move on to the next question. How is encryption different from hashing in cybersecurity?
It is similar. It is not like significantly different.
Okay, sir. So I think we'll move on to the next question. What are the best cybersecurity certifications for beginners?
I think CompTIA would be the important one
Yeah.
to look at. It's not that complex. It is slightly longer, but if you search on it, I think you'll get there.
Okay, sir. Thank you for that. The next question we have is that how does a firewall protect our data?
Firewall essentially prevents connections from being allowed or disallowed. Typically, it is more. It is not that it is not serving the purpose today, though it is very important. So firewalls came about where all the computers were inside an enterprise, and you had to put something and route all communication through one device. And that device is called firewall, whether it's a hardware device or a software device, where you have rules to see what connection is being attempted and whether that should be allowed or not allowed, right? That is what firewall does. So it prevents connections from going through or allows connections from going through. That's what it does. But it is typically doing it at an entry level for the organization. If you were to do it at every just before every computer, each of our computer actually has a firewall, but they don't activate that firewall because it's difficult, right? For a large company which has like thousands of employees, you don't implement at that level, and that is the complexity. And ColorTokens platform essentially uses that approach of moving the firewall closer to the asset that you're trying to prevent. So we are not a firewall company, but we utilize existing firewall products to implement those policies.
Okay, sir. Okay. So our next question is how do companies handle data leak?
Data lake or data leak?
Data leak.
Data leak. See, there are, if you have figured out that data leak is happening, then there is same answer as what I gave earlier, right? If you are breached, then you need to do that prevention. Now, typically for data leak, in MITRE framework, there are mechanisms of detecting, that data leak is happening. So, what are the signals you will observe to see whether data leak is happening? The smart attackers will not be, snatching big piece of data because they'll get detected, right? If some huge GB of data is getting transferred from one machine to another at say 2 a.m. in the night, that is a data leak. But you can be smarter. You can, do 10 kilobytes every hour from different machines and then take it up. So, but MITRE attack framework also allows you to detect that kind of attack. So the biggest thing that you must look at is how can I prevent a data leak from happening. Additionally, there are controls in each system in terms of how do I prevent an access to that particular data. That data will be typically at somewhere stored, right? So in that system, which is storing the data, what security controls should you implement? That is your first step. The second step is what kind of prevention and detection mechanisms will you have to prevent a data leak from happening? And if a data leak is happening, how do you know that it's happening? Right? The last one is if it has actually happened, what do you do to prevent it from further happening? There are data intrusion systems. There are data, privacy, data classification systems. There are some business processes also, that are laid down where every organization has to classify whether the data is confidential, not confidential, public, private, and so on. Most of the companies struggle through that process because they start with a lot of enthusiasm, but they are not able to do a thorough job there because it is not that easy to do data classification.
Great answer, sir. We'll move on to our next question. The next question is what is an XSS attack? An XSS attack.
It is cross-scripting attack, I think, if I'm right. It is. I would say it is a slightly technical, attack. So I would not want to go deeper because my answer might be wrong also. But most of these web applications, are kind of vulnerable to such attacks. Uh, what uh, what you should do is you should look at OWASP, OWASP. They publish which are the top 10 commonly occurring attacks, and I think XXS is one of those top 10. Uh, Essentially, what it is doing is, since a lot of your code is also data driven in the case nowadays, if the user is allowed to enter data in a way where they put semicolon, quote, and some of those special characters, it can actually fake the system to behave in a different way and get all the data out, right? So in a user input field, if I enter a data query, and if the system actually thinks that that is a data query and executes it, you are essentially giving up all the data to the user. So look through OWASP attack and get a little bit more technical answer there instead of my answer. You'll get good answers there.
Okay, great resource, sir. We'll move on to the next question. What is the difference between a firewall and an antivirus?
Okay, firewall is essentially a network prevention tool. It is preventing the traffic. Antivirus is a process control tool where it is preventing, or essentially it is detecting a file or a wrong file or a wrong process from being executed. Right. So antivirus essentially runs typically at the endpoint. The endpoint means a machine, a laptop or a server. Firewall runs at a network level where it is preventing connections from happening. Both of them, especially antivirus, is a negative security model. It is trying to detect if there is a bad file or if there's a bad program which is running or already in your system, right? So it is trying to cure and quarantine those things. So to go back to my analogy, it is trying to figure out whether this guy has a mustache or a curly hair or whatever, right? And antivirus is that kind of a technology. It's a negative security model technology where you're trying to figure out something is bad. Firewall is not that way. Firewall is just a device where you define your rules. It doesn't do anything on its own. You have to define what rules you have to define.
Very insightful, sir. We'll move on to our next question. How to recover data from a virus infected system?
I personally don't know that answer. Okay, so there are data encryption decryption technologies that are there, which can let you do that. Typically, things in case of a malware or a ransomware, it's very difficult to recover that particular data. So that is why there are data duplication or mirroring technologies that many companies use, so that if something gets impacted, they have a way to recover from the data backups that they might have taken. Often we have seen in our customer situation where the point of sale machines are very old machines, and if they get corrupted or malware, they just reformat. They don't seem to care much because they don't like to store much data there. They're okay with reformatting. So sometimes this recovering the data is not a very uniform answer. It is a very context specific answer. You have to really figure out what has corrupted the data. There are some products and companies who try to do something there. We are not in that area.
Okay. Thank you for answering that, sir. The next question asked is, how can we safeguard sensitive data?
Okay, so what? Let me ask you this, Agrima, this question. In your mind, what is the biggest vulnerability in any organization?
Uh, I think in an organization, their financial information, I guess, would be a vulnerability for them if it gets out.
Yeah, that is more of a, what is more important to them, but what causes the biggest cause of a vulnerability? That's my
Uh,
question.
like when the information gets out or like they are attacked by someone.
So let me give you this answer. See, most vulnerable thing in an organization is a user of a system, an employee of the company. Uh, there are phishing attacks. There are different ways by which you all store your passwords. There are technologies which can crack your password very easily, right? So there are, those are the things which are some of the basic controls that you will have to start with. The second vulnerability is the applications, right? This is where the OWASP, which I mentioned, uh, you know, even a firewall, sometime, I mean, some part of it is hardware, but a lot of part is software also, could have a vulnerability, right? So there could be software products which could have vulnerabilities too. You might have implemented some financial accounting system that might have a vulnerability. Who created that vulnerability? So the guy who did the programming, right? So generally, the user of the system is biggest. Second is the application. The third vulnerability is more of how you configure your network, right? How do you, what are the paths that you've left open to the machine that exists in the network? So as if you can put more restrictions on that, that will become more secure. And the least one is that there is generally, a lot of security actually conflicts with this with one of the another very important objective of the CIO, which is availability. Most of the CIOs are very worried about availability of the systems as much as they are worried about security of the system, right? So the concern that comes is that if I try to secure too much, am I going to damage the availability and performance? What if my CFO is trying to access my general accounting system and for some reason his connection got denied? I will lose my job, right? So that will be the kind of concerns that the IT leadership will have. So this is where sometimes the security rules are a little bit laxed in the organization, and that also is a cause of vulnerability. I kind of lost the track of original question, but I must have answered the question in the process.
It was a very interesting answer for sure. We'll move on to our next question. How to safeguard the IoT devices from cyber attacks?
IoT, there are some softwares that are there which are pretty much doing mirroring kind of an approach where they are trying to detect what kind of communications are going back and forth to the device. So one kind of solutions are at that level, mirroring near the IoT device, and then implementing controls at that stage. There are second which start from from a device which is connected, which is more like a computer, right? Normally plant systems have their own internals that are going on, but then there are computers which are connected to external world, right? So the security starts from there in many cases. They do try to isolate these IoT devices often, but those were more in the manufacturing, cases. But where now IoT is getting much and very prevalent into many areas, especially transport and warehouse distribution. Some of that is getting exposed. So you design your network in such a way that all communications for certain IoT machines are going through one computer, right? And then you implement controls at that computer. So those are the ways people are doing it today.
Okay, thank you for that insightful answer. The next question asked is, Sir, in private 5G, how does cybersecurity play a role?
Private what?
5G.
Private 5G. I don't have an answer to this question. I don't have.
Okay, that's fine. We'll move on to the next one. Is it safe to log into public Wi Fi as cafe work culture is a big hype?
I think it is okay. There are encrypted communications that happen. So there are, if you are an individual, it is not that much of a concern. But if you are an employee of some company, make sure that there are certain restrictions that each company puts on your corporate machines, including your laptops. Make sure that those are followed. But fundamentally, I don't think you can get away from working from airports or cafes. So I would not be worried there. But make sure that you don't have you know too much of data on your machine, which is very confidential to you, like
Okay,
storing the password on your screensaver.
Okay, sir. The next question we have is, sir, what are your thoughts on data selling as it's a huge market?
It's an opportunity. It is that 1:30 that I talked about. It belongs to that 6 trillion market. So it's a I would say wrong way of doing the business, but it exists today. I'm not talking of the data selling of for the business purpose, but something that is somebody's private data which you've kind of sold for making money. It's not the right ethical thing to do unless customer has given you a consent for that.
Okay, sir. Okay, so I guess the last question for the session would be, what is your advice to the budding engineers we have with us in the session?
I would say follow your passion. There is a lot of wave culture or fad culture that happens that this is important. Let's all go and jump there. So while that is important initially because it gives you foundation, good job, you're with your friends, they've joined similar companies and or similar courses. But what will be important is that if you're whichever domain you pick up in technology, make sure that you understand that domain well, right? So if you're into cybersecurity, you should understand the computers domain because you're trying to protect computers and the connections and the actions, right, of a computer. If you're joining retail, you should know the retail business. If you're joining, if you're trying to do an MBA, try to figure out why you're doing MBA. Is it just increasing your knowledge? Then that's fine. But if it is a specific purpose, then make sure you try to develop that skill. But do whatever you do with full passion. The competition has become very global, right? So if you who are budding engineers from one of the leading college in India are very lax about it, you will soon lose your importance to somebody else who's very sharp about it, right? So it's very, very important to do less number of things, but do it extremely well instead of doing too many things. Like I've seen resumes where I just can't understand unless I read it 3 times, right? So but that's how it is. But if you can explain what you've done very well, I think it'll come out in your discussions or interviews with your customers or with your future employees.
I guess that is a really great answer to give. Um, in the end, now, I would like to thank you a lot, sir, for taking out time from your busy schedule and sharing your valuable experience and answering our questions. I'm certain all of us have gained an insight into the industrial side of cybersecurity as you made learning a very fun experience for all of us. I would like to thank all the participants also for attending this session. Uh, the we- I would like to thank them. You can follow us in all the social media platforms to know more about our upcoming events. The link would be in the description below. Thank you all for joining this session. Thank
Thank
you,
you
sir.
very much and have lots of fun today. And it's a good hackathon that you all are organizing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Bye.
Bye.